years ago, and I do mean many, many years ago, there was a commercial. I don't know if you'll remember it or not. I can't even remember what the product was that they were doing. I think it may have been an investment banking firm or something, but it started out that if you have and they whispered the whole thing. Of course, when you whisper, people will start to listen because they think they're going to hear a secret. And it started out something like, if you know a secret and you tell someone, they'll tell two friends, and they'll tell two friends, and so on, and so on, and so on. And the graphic on the screen of the television, basically you saw the person there with their two friends, and then they just kept multiplying and just kept doubling over and over and over again until basically the two people basically had all these tiles of all these different faces, all of them in unison saying that they're telling two friends and telling two friends and so forth. In many ways, is that not how Jesus set up his ministry as a leader? Certainly, he was the only one who could save. Salvation subsists in the person and the paschal mystery of Jesus Christ. But the proclamation of the kingdom, even Jesus knew that this was not something that he could do on his own as a single human being. He gathered disciples. He sent them in pairs. They taught, they preached, they proclaimed, they healed, they forgave. And that's how the early church was perpetuated. St. Paul followed in like form. He had close companions. When he went out on his missionary journeys, he didn't go alone. He would take Timothy with him. He would take Titus with him. And you read the letters that he writes to these guys, and he's talking about how he left one of them here, he left one of them there. They formed communities. He'd go on with another, and that's how the gospel was perpetuated. It wasn't one person doing it all. It was one person finding leaders that they pulled out and set them into those communities to help them to perpetuate Christian community and bringing about the kingdom. What has changed in 2,000 years in that regard? Little to nothing, right? We're still doing this. We're still here, not because one person is doing it all. You know, it's not the Pope who does it all over the universal church. It's not the Archbishop who does it over the diocese. Good leaders find other leaders who work with them. Good pastors leverage the people in their parishes as member of the laity to send them out, to tell the good news of Jesus Christ, to bring people in. John Paul II wrote a beautiful letter on the ministry or the vocation of the laity, Christi Fidelis Laici. And one of the things he basically said in there, which I don't think he was stating anything more than the obvious, was the laity have access to areas of the world and of life that the clergy do not. And one of his things that he said that we need to be on guard with, and Pope Francis has echoed this many times, he says, we don't need to laicize the clergy, nor do we need to clericalize the laity, but rather see the unique gift in each. And the thing that we need to do more so is to empower the lay faithful to take up the gospel call and be like Timothy's and Titus's and the other people that they founded around them. And those Christian communities, remember, it wasn't like they founded religious orders of priests or nuns. They founded small Christian communities that grew into larger Christian communities. Today we call them dioceses, parishes and dioceses. But it all started by just going and gathering a group of people. Think about what that looks like in parishes when you break groups down into smaller groups, invite people into those groups who may not be affiliated with a local parish, who may not be connected to the church. It's allowing people to come in the shallow end of the pool. You know, how many of us want to go into the deep end of the pool right away? There may be a few who are really ready to say, hey, I'll just dive right in. I'm not one of those. You know, most of the time we want to test the waters when there's something new. So, you know, I think this may be a challenge for us today, just as Paul went out with his companions and preached and taught and brought people in an invitational model as they taught the gospel of Jesus Christ. Isn't that something we can do, is to introduce people, Come and see. Come encounter Jesus Christ. Come encounter his church. Sometimes even bringing people to Mass on Sundays, the deep end. It may be a little bit too much if they're unfamiliar. But you know what? Coming to a small group Bible study, a book study, or something smaller, even a social event where people get to meet people and have an opportunity to be welcomed. You think of the people in your life where, oh, I could never get this person to go to church. Maybe you couldn't. Maybe they're not ready to go off the diving board into the deep end of church. Maybe they'd come to an event where they make connections and they say, Jesus is a little bit different than I ever thought it might be. It's pretty much what Paul did. He went in with a companion, he went into a foreign territory, and he just started meeting people, started inviting people to get to know this Jesus Christ whom he had encountered. Remember yesterday, literally knocked off his horse and blinded, so his eyes were opened. You know, God can use us to do the same in the lives of others, to open eyes to see the glory of God, the beauty of his church, the benefits of being connected to Christian community. You know, none of the pinings of the human heart, I believe, have ever changed. It's just today we've taken, I think, some substitutes. Young adults today, like young adults of every age, pine for Christian community and connection. It's just today, well, many of us look back and say, yeah, I did that as a young person connected to the church. Now they're kickball leagues, volleyball leagues, drop-in things. We all need community. We need to say, okay, how do we invite people into this community and make a community that the Lord can use to bring people closer to him? For each of us, though, we also need to be ready to give that invitation. Come with me to this. Think about that. And in the whole process of it all, never stop praying and never use a battering ram when a knock will do. God can help us with that invitation. We don't need to ram it down anybody's throats, but simply be an invitational community who live our lives faithfully, somewhat quietly, maybe a little bit boisterously at times when we are exuberant with joy, but nonetheless being those great witnesses that the Lord needs to evangelize his world. Amen? Let's turn to the Lord now as we offer our prayers.